Thank you for downloading this podcast from the British Theatre Guide. For more information about British Theatre Guide, please visit britishtheatreguide.info. The hottest tickets for 2014's autumn theatre season in Manchester are not touring blockbuster musicals, but productions of Shakespeare from two of the region's leading theatre companies, the Royal Exchange and Home Manchester, one of which has sold out completely before opening night, and the other has extended by a week due to the demand for tickets. Manchester's Royal Exchange Theatre is to stage a production of Hamlet directed by artistic director Sarah Frankcom, starring popular stage and TV actress Maxine Peake in the title role of the Danish prince. When we spoke to Sarah and Maxine, with 2.5 weeks to go before opening, this had already become one of the theatre's most popular productions in terms of ticket sales and had just announced a week's extension to the run. Director Sarah Frankcom began by talking about how rehearsals are progressing, and actor Maxine Peake then spoke about their approach to the production.
Yeah, I mean, kind of we're really in the kind of pitch of it now. It's sort of exhausting and kind of joyous, frustrating, exciting, fast-moving, kind of changing all the time, no day's the same. Finding lots out still.
Yeah, definitely.
And enjoyable.
Yeah, it's definitely enjoyable. It's been quite sort of fluid, hasn't it?
Yeah.
How we sort of discussed it, but we've never really, we didn't until we started really set anything, And I think you don't know until you get the other actors in the room and everything. It all works. It's theatre's a team effort unless you're in a one-person show. So you can't really, I don't think you can set anything until you get all the elements together, and then it's never set, is it? It changes and it evolves, and it'll be very different from the first performance. Hopefully, you hope, that's what you hope, that, it keeps growing as you get through the production.
A bit of a longer rehearsal period, yeah, we've had 6 weeks, so...
Well, we had a week together, and then 5 weeks with everyone else.
I mean, I think obviously we had to make some choices before we started, but I think what's been exciting is to invite the company into the process of making a piece of theatre, so that I think that's the thing about particularly a play like this, is that actually we all have to discover things for the first time with it, and it's been kind of, and I think actually what's been really good is holding our nerves with that, not having too many fixed assumptions about what things might be. So yes, it is a big mountain.
Yeah.
I asked Maxine whether her Hamlet is a female character or whether she is simply a female actress playing Hamlet.
It's a he, we're calling it a he, but it is a she.
Yeah.
So it is a female, Hamlet is female who feels more akin to the male sex, so presents and expects everyone else to respect that, so everyone calls me he.
How does that change the way the language works? Does it bring something different out?
Yeah, it really does. Sort of some of the things that I read initially as I would class as misogyny now are really potent, aren't they?
Yeah.
That it sort of flips it and you go, all right, I forgive you, Shakespeare, now for this. This actually this really works as a woman masquerading, not masquerading, she, in touch with the more masculine side of her saying these lines do then really give it just a real weight, and it feels right, doesn't it? There's some lines that you go, oh my God, it's definitely room for a woman, definitely.
And I think it's really important that kind of one of the reasons for us kind of feeling quite bold and quite positive about making, because I would say our Hamlet is a combination of male and female, and is kind of, and in terms of gender, we've looked at gender as a spectrum rather than as something that's either male or either female. So Hamlet kind of occupies different parts of that spectrum at different points in the play, and sometimes is kind of whatever we feel male is, actually, because I think that's, kind of sometimes we've tried not to have kind of prescribed notions of what male is and what female is, actually, and just create a Hamlet that feels to be able to move between two of those fixed points and occupy some interesting places between the two of them. And I think the important thing to remember is that the source material for Hamlet is based on a Danish legend, which kind of Shakespeare was referencing, which actually is a cross-dressed girl child. So it kind of feels that right at the sort of inception of it as a play, this is a writer that sort of is interested in the notions of blurring gender.
There's only way we could present it, being a female, and we thought, why not? I think it stemmed from after we'd done Miss Julie, we sort of said, right, what's next? And I think, well, I don't know what people say, but I think we felt we just wanted to keep stretching ourselves. And we were like, okay, what next is a big challenge? And then actually sitting down and going, right, those female roles, those big female roles, and a lot of them had just been done, so we're like, well, that's not going to work. And then they're quite difficult, actually. There's not that many that, you know, stretches as this role would stretch, so we just, you know, why not? Why should it just be the preserving men? And you just sort of hope that after this and what's been happening at the Donmar, then people will just go, right, we're going to do a production of, you know, Macbeth, and, you know, she's going to play. You know, men do it. Yeah. Loads of male companies bobbing about who do all male, you know, as if they've not got enough parts as it is. So why can't, you know, why have we taken so long for it to...
And also, there's a up until this century, you know, kind of, there's a massive tradition of women playing this role, huge, and it was seen as being kind of, for a lot of, you know, really well-regarded female actresses in sort of in the Victorian age and before, it was seen as being kind of part and parcel of your kind of journey and genesis as an actor, and it just, I don't know, it's very funny though, because right when Maxine and I first started working with each other, we've been doing things for kind of about 10 years now, haven't we? And it was, you have mentioned this a lot over the years.
Well, it was a bit, why not?
It's not something that's sort of, it is something, it feels like we're doing it at the right time now, doesn't it?
I couldn't have, yeah. Only Michelle's a little bit younger for the memory aspect of it, but I think maybe, you know, for the life, experience aspect of it, then I think, yeah. And it was never an arrogance of going, I can do this. No. It's just like, I want to go, you know what I mean? And while we've got this working relationship, and we don't have to go to people and pitch things and go, oh, can we? We've got this amazing space and an amazing audience, really.
Yeah.
That I think after we did Mask of Anarchy went, oh well, there's a lot of people sort of on our side, aren't they, who want something a bit different and something that feels like it's made for Manchester.
Yeah.
We're going, why should London have all the fun, you know? So
you mentioned something about Manchester in the publicity. Why is this geared towards Manchester? What's the new one?
We put a lot of Smith songs in, no, would you?
I think it's a gesture of doing something kind of this. It's a big thing to be doing, and it feels like one of the important aspects of a big regional theatre and a theatre in this city is about making work and premiering work exclusively for Manchester audiences. And I think there's I also think there's a part of the play where Hamlet kind of creates a piece of theatre right at the centre of the play, and it kind of feels that it was very important that piece of theatre both reflected some of what Max and I kind of believe theatre to be, and the kind of the inclusivity of theatre, and it also felt really important that was reflected absolutely the city that we're in, rather than a kind of an invented world of Elsinore.
Sarah was asked whether there had been any talk about taking the production elsewhere after its run at the Exchange.
No, I mean, there's all sorts of, kind of conversations that fly around, but I think the important thing is for us to make it here, and to make it for this space, and to make it for audiences that come to this theatre first and foremost. Yeah. And I think, kind of it's the first project that's part of Maxine being an associate artist in this theatre, and I think we've got other big projects that we're going to be doing. So it kind of, I don't know, but I think probably at this point in time, I think we'll just be grateful to get it. I think you're going to write something, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm going to write something, start that sort of after this and see where we get. And then Scutlers, do a bit of sort of mentoring with some of the young actors in that. And I think just basically be around and be available for what.
Yeah. And then we can't talk about the next project, but we'll do a big project this time next year. So with Max as an actor. Tell them, because actually you've had kind of a huge year already, because your play has been a massive monumental hit in Leeds. So I kind of think that's kind of I'm really excited about this theatre engaging with Max as a writer.
Yeah, that was a bit of a surprise actually. I did Beryl, played by Beryl Burton, that was on the West Yorkshire Plays, which was it sounds off. It was a big hit. I mean, it was local and it was a local story, and it sort of seemed to tap into, you know, it was extended and sold out, and they did a brilliant director and brilliant actors. So, but it was just sort of going, right, okay, I think it was going, maybe that's my voice that taps into, you know, sort of that local audience, maybe not necessarily always theatre goers. I think a lot of people who went to see Beryl, I mean, it was about cyclists, there was lots of people who were, you know, interested in cycling clubs turned up. That's been really exciting. So it's sort of finding that voice now and having the confidence in it, and then writing something for this theatre. And just, you know, for me it's about entertaining people and educating people, but not baffling them with, you know, I don't know. But yeah, I am excited, and I'm excited about creating something, especially for this space. Yeah, as a writer, it's like sort of quick going, I'm not a writer. People saying, you have written, you are now a writer. You know, so
with your...
Yes, I have a book, yes. I've got about 6 at home. People want one of these. But yeah, so that's all been really exciting, yeah, and then to sort of go, yeah, you have to sort of pinch yourself and go, and now I'm doing Hamlet, crikey. I don't quite know, yeah, so...
Maxine was asked to talk about how the radio play that she wrote, Beryl, was taken on as a stage play by West Yorkshire Playhouse.
Actually, I was meeting a friend I was in Surrey, London, in a coffee shop, and I was meeting a friend, and she said, it's a director called Sarah Frankcom, and she said, you can't stay long because James Briney's coming to meet from the West Yorkshire Playhouse. And as I was leaving, James came in, and he said, have you written a radio play by Beryl Burton? And I said, yeah. He said, well, I'm going to get in touch with you, and then off I went, and I didn't really know what that meant. And then he got in touch and said, look, obviously, you know, the Tour de France is coming to Leeds. We want to produce something that's in conjunction with that, and then a local story. And we sort of felt, because obviously the Tour de France is very male, it would be really exciting to have a female story. And obviously Beryl's, you know, they had a little token race at the end of the Tour de France for the women. You know, Beryl's story was all about the struggle still that female cyclists have. I know we've got our Victoria Pendletons, but they're still in road racing. There's still a real sort of prejudice about what women can achieve. And then you get this woman who sort of basically was better than the majority of the men. So it just sort of fitted in. And then it was just really exciting how it took off. And obviously there's a lot of love for Beryl in Leeds. And then a lot of people who just didn't know about her was inspired. And it's those ordinary stories that fascinate me. You know, and I just think it's sort of about trying to slightly inspire people as well and go, you know what? You don't all have to go to fancy schools, and you know, as it's been on the news this morning, hasn't it? It's quite sort of potent saying, but I've only just realised that sort of 60% of people in, you know, the top, I went to private school, and it's like, well, that's not a new thing. But you know what I mean? So it was just finding those stories, and those female stories, sort of, I don't think there's anything as ordinary, but ordinary women who then did extraordinary things, and Beryl really sort of captured that, and it was better being a sportswoman, really, more than being a woman, you know. She made no concessions. She did what she wanted to do, and that really spoke to me, you know. So
yeah. How does the writing fit in with the acting? I've heard Simon Cowell, very prolific biographer. He said that he tends to do a lot of writing while he's sat around on film sets and TV sets, but there's a lot of downside.
Yeah, you do.
Not when you're rehearsing Hamlet.
No, luckily I got everything out of the way. I mean, Beryl was a bit, you know, I was like, oh my God, I've got to, you know, and I knew it went out, you know, it was going out before this, but yeah, there was an element of going, I've got to, yeah, there was a slight panic of timescales and getting up at sort of 5 a.m. and doing a bit, and then at work, you know, like I say, I'd take the computer to work with me if I was filming, and at lunchtime we write a bit, and you know, you've got a couple of scenes off, write a bit more, you know, and sort of been jotting down notes as you, but yeah, it's not ideal. It'd be nice, that's what I'm quite saying, is to write something and actually go, at the moment I'm just writing something, rather than sort of going, oh God, I've got to get this finished, and maybe not being quite as good or as polished as you sort of want it to be, you know, sometimes. But I think from what I spoke to other writers, deadlines are always, even if you've got all the time in the world, deadlines always seem to take people by surprise, you know.
Maxine was asked whether there are fewer roles available for female actors at this stage in her career.
Well, I think there are, but then it's maybe you have to start, it's about then changing that view of, like we do in Hamlet, what roles are for women and what roles aren't. You know what I mean? And some parts maybe are ageless, you know what I mean? We get very sort of stuck, don't we? I mean, and of course some parts, you know what I mean? But yeah, I do think, I'm 40 now, and I do wonder, especially in theatre, I think there is a point where you go, a lot of roles have gone now, that maybe you think, I'd like to have a stab at that. Yeah, trying to think, because we sort of sat there going, what can we do, and, there wasn't reams and reams of stuff that we were coming up with. Some of the Greeks.
Yeah, I mean, Greeks, so Medea.
Yeah.
And we kind of looked at Ibsen a little bit and kind of decided that didn't feel quite right. But I think that, kind of what Maxine's saying about, it's a thing that I really grapple with too. There is, there are some amazing theatre actors, female theatre actors, who are between sort of 35 and 50, and it's a real battle to find anything for them to do. And even in Shakespeare, kind of once you've done kind of Rosalind, what have you got to look forward to?
And they're always quite problematic, those female. I find the female roles in Shakespeare, Kate in Taming of the Shrew, Isabella in Measure for Measure. I find they're not.
You have to wait for Queen Margaret.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And Cleopatra. And I think that kind of thing about films, sometimes those female roles are quite limiting. And I think one of the things about doing Hamlet is, how many times have you ever had to do a big fight on stage?
Yeah.
Ever? Never. All that training in stage combat at RADA, and it's the first time you've used it. But yeah. The notions of kind of doing something, it's really exciting to see someone who's been, kind of made a lot of work in theatre over the years, kind of doing things for the first time at the age of 40. It kind of seems a bit mad to me.
Yeah, I've been thrown over. It was morning yesterday when we pulled it off. I pulled the muscle in my armpit as Kevin, the fight director, threw me over his, you know what I mean? And it's proper full on. And that's what's been great, you get to stretch all the muscles. And I said yesterday to Kevin and Ashley Zingazzi, who's playing Laertes, and I said, it's a bit like a dream come true. I'm on stage and I'm doing a sword fight, and then I'm punching him in the head. You know what I mean? You sort of go, I get it. Why all men get very overexcited about wanting to play Hamlet, because you go, you do everything. Every emotional base is covered. Physically, acting, it is sort of encapsulating the ultimate part where you get to stretch everything. And you think, you don't get that.
How do you feel when you get to the famous bits, to be allowed to be and stuff like that? Is it daunting to come to something that everybody's doing before?
Well, no, I think coming as a female, I sort of go, I don't feel there's any. I'm sort of maybe naively thinking there's no expectation. If I was a male actor, I think I'm not saying I'm not panicking about it, don't get me wrong, but that expectation of what is, how it's going to be done, I just sort of, because I did speak to a lot of actors before we played, a handful of actors before we played it, and they were like, oh God, it's, I was quite slightly overwhelmed by even after they'd done it. There was a very few of them who went, I had a great time. People, that was really difficult, it never gets any better. I learnt my lines a year before, and you go, so I've slightly had to, that's been, I should, certain time when you think, maybe don't talk to people before you do something, but then I thought, you've got that pressure, haven't you, of, hundreds of years of great actors that they've followed that line of. Well, there's not that many for me, and those that have, not many people, the productions of either, only a few people remember or saw them, or, you know what I mean, so sort of slightly got nothing to be compared to, although, you will, people can't help it. But
there's a tenderness in this Hamlet, there's a violence in this Hamlet, there's a kind of very different kind of wit in this Hamlet, and there's an emotional kind of openness and vulnerability in this Hamlet. That I'm not saying that those things haven't existed in other Hamlets, but they feel very unique to the actor that's playing the part. And I think that kind of in a way, one of the things that we've tried to do is not think about all the different productions that have gone before and different interpretations, and we've tried to think about making something for people who don't know anything about it as a play, for the first, kind of what's it like to see this play for the first time, to experience this story for the first time, where you don't have any preconceptions about who Hamlet is. And I think that's in order to kind of stop ourselves kind of becoming paralysed with, oh my God, it's felt much better to look at it like that.
Yeah.
So I think it's really important. We've tried to create a world that's believable and a Hamlet that breaks your heart.
I've seen before with the things that happen at the Donmar, and I feel it's just people just need a little bit of confidence, don't they? Go, okay, well if they're doing it, then we can do it, and then you just sort of hope in 10 years' time that it's not. Nobody questions it. It's just that's who happens to be playing Hamlet. That's who happens to be playing Macbeth, Henry V. You know what I mean? The right person for the role. And I think sometimes as an actress, and there have been male roles that I thought I can do that. I feel I get my head into that. Just because I haven't got the appropriate genitalia doesn't mean that I can't understand that. And sometimes you get female roles that you go, I don't get. I spend a lot of time going, I don't get this woman.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so it's hard, and so it's just been this opportunity. It's just been that's it's been extraordinary. It is a dream come true because I don't think years ago I'd ever thought it would happen. So yeah, you just hope that now it will, that people go, okay, yeah, that's why not. I'm not just saying it, but I think what the Exchange has done is amazing. When you look at the productions recently, and the majority of the leads especially have been female-led productions, which I don't really know other theatres that follow suit, really. And I do feel, you've got writers like Simon Stevens who blindsided female-led production, but then, I don't know, maybe I'm not so good.
I think when we do the Bromwood Prize, the thing that's quite interesting is that although when we first started doing it, the female entries were much smaller than male, and that balance is now about 50-50. But it's interesting, women, I'm going to regret saying this, but there's not a naturally follow through with. You would think more women would create more parts for women, and I don't know whether that's necessarily true. And why should they actually? Why should it be their responsibility to create roles for women? And when I think about the plays that have kind of come through the Bromwood Prize, which I think is a really good barometer of where we're at, there are some interesting roles, but there isn't. I can't think of one play that has actually had a monumental role for an actress. I'm probably forgetting something. And I think one of the things that we try to do, and I'm trying to do, is to, in sort of with mid-career writers and more experienced playwrights, is kind of really throwing down the gauntlet and saying, actually actively want to commission. And I think actually it's a self-perpetuating thing, because there are fewer female protagonists in the classical repertoire. I think actually it's kind of there's something that I think some playwrights kind of actually sometimes kind of need to have their eyes open to kind of what they can and can't explore on stage in terms of female protagonists. And I think things are getting better, but we're in a situation now where we can kind of actively kind of make programming choices to kind of try and address some of this stuff. More women than men buy tickets for the theatre. And one of the things that I have constantly struggled with ever since I've been making work in this theatre is that I don't see myself represented on stage. And that's right, I mean, the work that I've tried to make is, I have to, in some way, it's not that I want to see a carbon copy of myself, but I have to see some of my life experience reflected. And I think if we don't do that as a theatre culture and as an art form, then theatre is going to kind of actually become less and less relevant. And I think, now I'm in a situation and Max is where we can kind of go, well, actually, we're just going to do it. There's a sort of a bit of a fuck it attitude. And I think there's something quite liberating about it. And it's the first of kind of quite a lot of things that are kind of going to start to change around. Because are starting to change here, I think.
But you do sense that people want it, don't you? There's
a
real sense. I speak to... I mean, what really touched me is when I said I was doing this, how many actresses emailed me and said, thank you for doing this for us. And I was like, wow, I didn't, you know what I mean? I wasn't setting out to be a man, but that really touched me, you know, and I thought, God, people are feeling, it's not just performers. They are, like Sarah says, I think people do they get used to what they're being given, and then they start to realise once they start seeing other things, actually, they have a real need to see their lives out there, or things that really speak to them, and actually theatre can do that.
Has there been any other reaction so far, positive or negative, to the choice of cast?
I think that the most extraordinary reaction is kind of, you know, the amount of people that are coming to, and you know, kind of it's the most kind of popular selling show that we've ever had, and I think that's something to do with people want to see the play, but I think people are really excited. People seem to be really excited about the proposition of how we're doing it. And I also, I kind of share that thing with Maxine. I've been really blown away by, and you kind of think actually that's the responsibility. I mean, it's not actually necessarily the pressure of kind of serving the play. It's actually the pressure of people's expectations about kind of, you know, you could kill off the notion of a female Hamlet if we don't get this right. You know what I mean? That's the bit that really worries me, because but you know, I think that it's not just to do with gender, it's to do with disability, it's to do with race, it's to do with kind of, you know, representation and diversity, and I kind of it's something that, you know, I feel very passionate about, and I kind of think that it's been encouraging that people have recognised that we're trying to do something here and want to support it.
Maxine was asked to talk about her physical preparation for the role of Hamlet.
Just been trying to get a little bit fitter. Been cycling in the morning, although my sport brought this morning on my wheel on my back, it's a bit late, so I had to jump in the car. But yeah, just sort of being quite conscious that I've got to be, there is a level of fitness required. I'm sure I'll get better, but we were doing the fight yesterday, and Sarah did come in and said, "You do know you have a speech after this," as I'm leaning on the side. It's like, can I just not die now? So there is, I've sort of been doing a few early morning hot yoga classes as well up in Northern Quarter, just to sort of get slightly fitter, just because it is, I mean, emotionally it's, you know, but then as well, on top, and I've done stuff before. I remember Miss Julie being emotionally quite exhausting, but then coupled with, that was only an hour and a half, with with another hour on top, and then a couple of fights in there and whatnot.
How have you approached the choice of the text? Because there are different versions and they're all very long. You cut a lot or swap between.
Well, we've made some interventions into the text. So we've taken a kind of part of the story out. We've swapped the gender of some of the roles. And really, when looking for the right version to do, first of all, I did a cut version, which was so cut and so radical. Actually, maybe we'd better we've lost too many things. But actually, for me, I went to the kind of production that I thought was the clearest and most fresh and fast-paced telling of the story, and that was the version that was prepared for Michael Grandier's production, which that was our starting point, and then we've made some of our own kind of alterations and interventions into that. So it is, I mean, Hamlet normally is about 4 hours. I think this is closer to just over 3. So we've lost quite a bit, but you've got to be quite brutal with it. And I'm sure that some purists will hate us for it. But actually it's kind of, I think, you can't do the definitive production of Hamlet. We need to do, the choices have been led by creating a piece of theatre that is about this Hamlet.
Maxine was asked about her first experiences of Shakespeare.
The first play, we've sort of read bits from, I remember we saw the Polanski's version of Macbeth was at school. But I must admit, I was always taught, and then I went to college, I remember going to Salford Tech, and we were always told there, we used to do a speech, and we used to have to do a speech, a dance, and a song every couple of months, and we were told, do not touch Shakespeare. None of you will be able to achieve it, leave it alone. So it was that thing that I was frightened to death of. And even at drama school, one thing I felt slightly lacking at Rada, and it's horrible to say, we didn't do enough Shakespeare. We worked on little speeches and we did things like that, but in my third year I never did a production, so I was petrified of it. And then played Ophelia at the West Yorkshire Playhouse 12 years ago. Probably wasn't that great, so I just sort of went, maybe it's not. But you don't look at Hamlet as, I've not looked at it as going, it's Shakespeare. It's just, it's a great play and it's a great part, and I think there needs to be there needs to be a sea change in the way people think about Shakespeare. Again, I know I go on about it and they go Conrad Peake again, but I do think it's a class thing. You know what I mean? That it's still a little seen as in some respects as elitist. You know what I mean? But then you look at the people in our company, like from the RSC, Georgie McNee, you know, from Liverpool, Michelle. Just we've got some brilliant RSC actors who are not, you know, what I would envisage as the typical. So things have broken. That sounds terrible, but I think things are starting to break down. But I just find, I was frightened to death of it for a long time, and even after 3 years at Raja, I didn't feel any more confident with it. And then working with Sarah and, you know, just sort of going. Sarah said, it's just, you know, it's nothing to be frightened of. It's just words. It just, you know, it's the truth of it. And you go, right, okay. Whether I'll get that, I don't know. But yeah, it's. So that was the first. But I've not been. You know, there's a lot of people in the company speak to, and they're absolutely, you know, aficionados on Shakespeare. But then you think once you're done, you know, now it's opened up a whole world to me and made me feel, you know.
Hamlet runs at the Royal Exchange Theatre in Manchester from the 11th of September to the 25th of October 2014. For more information, see royalexchange.co.uk. Manchester's new arts centre, Home, which merges the former Library Theatre Company with Corner House Cinema, is presenting a series of site-specific productions in the run-up to the opening of its new purpose-built venue next spring. The first of these was Angel Meadow, the subject of a previous British Theatre Guide podcast episode. Following this is new artistic director Walter Meierjohann's directorial debut for the company, a production of William Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet performed in Manchester's historic Victoria Baths, which has sold out before its opening night. You will shortly hear a presentation by Walter and dramaturg Petra Jane Tauscher, followed by interviews with Alex Felton and Sarah Vickers, who play Romeo and Juliet, and with director Walter Meierjohann. But first, here is Mark Jacks as Capulet, introducing the ball scene.
Welcome, gentlemen! Ladies and their toes are playing with calls. Shall walk about with you. My mistresses. Which of you all will now deny to dance? She that makes safety, she I swear hath rules. Am I coming in now?
Just really briefly, why Romeo and Juliet? I've always loved the play. I've once experienced, I believe, the play when I was a student. I had a girlfriend in Vienna, and I was living in Berlin, and we sometimes met either in the Czech Republic or in Poland as a meeting point. And one day we didn't find anywhere to stay, and we stayed somewhere in a derelict sort of. It was a hostel. But there were 50 Mercedes-Benz parked outside. And we asked the landlord, can we have a night? And he said, yeah, it's got one room left, because this evening 2 clans, Sinti and Roman, were coming together and they were making peace that night. Lots of celebration, it was fantastic. 4 o'clock in the morning, we woke up, a scream, and what happened was that the young son of the one clan and the daughter had sneaked away with the car keys of the father, and driving off in one of these old Mercedes-Benz. This was all beginning of the 90s, and you can imagine what happened after this celebration in the night. Suddenly screaming, shouting, doors slamming. I thought I heard gunshots as well. But what happened, like half an hour later, the whole place cleared and 50 Mercedes-Benz were chasing after this young couple. So I always thought, that's brilliant. If I ever could do Romeo and Juliet as a film, I would that would be the sequence where they all, in the morning, would follow 50 Mercedes-Benz following these lovers driving through the night in Poland. I've always loved Shakespeare. I've never done I'm not English. Shakespeare is a huge challenge, but I think this is something for you. I think he's the best, of course. But of course he has challenges. He's a brilliant poet and a dramatist. I've been very keen on embedding, and when we programmed the season, I was very keen on having a production which invites the audience, which is a well-known piece, but doing it a bit differently. And so, as you know, sort of Romeo and Juliet is the second part of our season. We've got 3 locations. We're calling this the site-specific season. The first one, I hope you all saw because it was remarkable. Angel Meadow, directed by Louise Lowe. That was the first one. This is now part 2. And then the third set, what we're going to do afterwards is, as we're based in First Street, we're going to have a mini sort of season of invited productions from Europe and from London, and so that's the third part. We're now in the middle of, we're going to open next week with R&J, and just to talk about Victoria Baths, I initially, when I got the job, I was very pleased, of course, and then we found out, home opens later, so the idea was, let's do a site-specific season. Louise Lowe was the expert on site-specific. I'm not an expert, but I worked with Claire Turner, who was a site-specific expert, to find locations. I gave her a brief, and it was very much about urban, gritty. I was thinking very much hoodies and gangs, but then she offered me a lot, and I was walking around and thinking, something's not quite right. And then I went here on a private tour. Someone said to me, go and have a look. I went in here and I stepped in and was like, okay, this is the place for Romeo and Juliet. Because it has this beautiful, I would say, faded beauty. And there's a lot about, I would say, memory in this space. It has, like Romeo and Juliet, a lot about beauty, and also maybe because it's empty, there's a sense of loss in here as well. So I think the themes of Romeo and Juliet, obviously it's about youth and old generation, about love and hatred. But I felt in this space basically the sense of maybe faded beauty, and that's something I'm very keen to explore. And you'll see that when you walk into the space, and for the people who've maybe swum in here as well. I was very inspired when we walked into the ladies' pool, the cubicles. When I walked in, I was, bang, got it. Capulet's that side, Monty's that side, done. We've got the 2 households basically facing each other. And that's how we actually start the production. That's how the whole piece starts, with 2 sort of feuding clans, and then we have a bridge. You'll see that all in a minute. So it starts with the clans coming out, and like Shakespeare wrote it starts with a huge fight. Yeah, and then just to talk you through what we're doing here, and again, I'm just really, really, really grateful for the support we get. And site-specific for me always means, because normally I'm used to just working in a black box theatre. Here it's about connecting. It's about, for me, also dialogue with Manchester, and of course a very beautiful part of Manchester, because I don't know many swimming pools or locations like this which still exist and have this beauty. So what we're doing is, just to let you know, it's called a promenade piece, but actually what we're doing is Act 1 to 4, we are in one pool, and that's the ladies' pool, which is the smallest, most intimate one, and we'll have a look at that. Ty Green, the set designer, put a lot of things that we call it, like we have to make it a magic box in a way, to have many tools. And then after Act 4, which then Romeo is in exile in Mantua, at the end of Act 4, when Juliet is supposedly dead, We have a procession and we move into the sports hall, which is the middle bit, and that's where Mantua is. And then from then onwards, which is only going to last about 10 minutes, and then at the very end we go into the gala pool, which is the big finale. We have instead of a tomb, we have a big cross. And one of the things I can announce, right, is the water, because we have talked about it. So one of the big things, we are actually going to fill one of the pools with water. And
86,000 gallons.
That's right.
And probably that movement through the spaces very nicely, I think, reflects the dramaturgy of the play, really. Because I think there's a lot of humour at the beginning of Romeo and Juliet. Some of the characters are almost stock comic characters. And that's something we were keen to explore and bring out. So that intimate atmosphere of the first space is very useful to us. Whereas the final space has this kind of epic, operatic grandeur. So I think that's very convenient to us that it was built this way. You said perhaps I should say something about the edit. It was really important to us to edit the text for quite practical reasons on one side. A lot of the audience stand. You have the choice of seated tickets or standing tickets, a bit like the Globe. So considering people are standing for such a long time, and this is an unheated building, this performance could not stretch endlessly into hours and hours. So just for people's sense of comfort and concentration, it needed to be condensed. Alongside that, I also, as a modern theatre goer, I also appreciate sometimes curtailing Shakespeare a little bit, reducing it, condensing it. I think a modern audience sometimes appreciates a little bit of space, a little bit. There are other dramatic expectations that we have. They're often visual. They might be physical. It might be something else. So although some wonderful lines may be lost, hopefully it's replaced with some other things that are communicating the same thing. There are no major omissions. I think there are some cheeky tweaks, I will admit, but nothing I think Shakespeare would be outraged by. I hope he would support them. But we've had a lot of fun with it. It's a wonderful story, and I just wanted to bring out the strength and clarity of that story. Shakespeare is really, really difficult to understand. It requires a huge amount of conversation, I think we have, of concentration rather, and I think we have to be really open about that. And I don't want an audience to feel tested and overwhelmed by the amount of language. We're very keen to encourage a young audience, perhaps an audience who are not natural Shakespeare audience members, really encourage them to come, them to leave and say, my goodness, I've really enjoyed that, I'd like to see another Shakespeare. That's really, really key to us. We're not in a conventional theatre space, there's something different, and we wanted to reflect that in the edit, and to just celebrate the story of the play in this unusual space.
What lady is that? She doth teach the torches to burn bright. My heart loved till now, forswear its sight, for I ne'er saw true beauty till this night.
This, by his voice, should be a Montague.
How do you feel when you were told you were being offered parts of Romeo and Juliet then? Was that a big thing?
Yeah, massively. And in fact, the way Felcher gave us the roles was in the room.
Oh yeah.
So it was this very unusual.
At the audition, wasn't it?
Yeah. So normally you go away and then you don't hear anything for ages, and you pull your hair out, and then you get a call from your agent saying but he was just like, oh, I just want to tell you you've got the part. And you're like, what? This is not tradition. This is not how we do. But it was great. I mean, amazing. But I was just like, yes. I was like, I have to obviously go and check my agent, but yes. Yeah,
absolutely. It was, it's insane. It was like, I know this isn't the British tradition, but I'm German, so whatever. and he did, and it was... Yeah, it was great. It was a real relief because it had gone on for ages. The first audition, and then like a month in between, and then it just kept going on in my head, like because I just, like I said, I discovered how good the play was. Like through auditioning, and I just wanted to look at it more and more and more. So I was really pleased.
You were saying before about Walter's methods as well, which aren't traditional British. It's the way I've worked actually when I've directed, but he gets you up on your feet straight away. There was no table work at all, no analysing the text.
There was a little bit, but it was in the past. The table work, you sit and you kind of read it through, and you kind of. But if you tried to kind of read it at a kind of reading level, he'd be like, "Go for it, go for it." Why? And then we had. To the point where he was pushing people so much, we had people jumping on the table during the table read. So he didn't want a table read really.
He wanted the
full shebang. He wanted to play. He needed to. He's very visual. And he needs to see it.
That's it.
He can't. It's just like I want to see it all there, and then I can direct. I don't want you to kind of like tiptoe around it and
and it just saves a lot of time. Why do we bother? Just because you do like a table reading. I'm not gonna go too far. I'm just gonna put it in the grey area.
Hold it back.
And you just I think it's helpful to just go for it, and then if it's wrong, he'll tell you. That's the thing. I think you just worry that people won't tell you. But he will definitely tell you.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Because you expect the German tradition or the European tradition, you'd expect him to come with a fixed idea of what he wants you to do and to tell you how to do it. That's the cliche of the European director into more than the British director.
I didn't know that.
But he's not like that at all.
No, and to the point where he'd come in and he would say, "Oh, okay, I don't know. Let's see what do you think? How do you think this should be?" And I'm like, "Oh, wow!" And then we had that whole discussion about the balcony scene, and it was really from scratch. So it was totally open and up for grabs as to what we did with it.
Which is lovely because you feel a lot more like ownership over it if you've collaborate, I suppose, rather than being told what to do.
But Shakespeare is quite difficult because of the language and because of the length of them, and there's a lot of words in there as well. So is this a shortcut to actually getting to grips with it in the sort of rehearsal times that we're stuck with in this country in funded theatres?
Yeah, we definitely, I think it would have been lovely to have longer to go over it. But I don't know, I guess we've just found the language through action, and it's a very punchy production. We're cutting it down to 2 hours, which I don't know what the original would be, like 4, do you reckon?
Yeah, I think they said if they ran it would be about 4.5 hours.
Wow.
But it's interesting that it says in the prologue 2.
Yeah.
Yes.
But then, I'm not even sure if we're going to run it 2 either. It's kind of like...
They obviously spoke very quickly in Elizabethans.
Right.
Exactly.
Or they didn't have watches, I don't know.
Yeah,
how did they tell the time?
Kind of roughly...
Yeah.
It's got to be roughly 2, we don't know.
Yeah, just by the sun, was it, at that point?
Well, it's because it was an afternoon show, wasn't it?
The
outdoors, so...
That's true. That's what's interesting actually about doing the in the day. There is no. Normally, you're used to being a blackout and all that, and the power of light. But here, it's like, it's flooded with light.
As it would have been originally. But you've got the audience surrounding you like it would have been in Shakespeare's theatre.
Yeah, that's lovely.
Exactly. So that's
is that a difference because you can see? Of course, you haven't had a proper audience yet, but do you think that's going to be a difference?
Yeah, I think it will be, and I think. The only one problem with, because we use the whole space so vastly and people come in and dive in from different entrances all the time, that it's just might be difficult to keep the focus because the light normally focuses where the audience should be. So we don't have that. So in the daytime, that will be a bit of a challenge.
You have to grab them.
You have to,
physically.
Just
hold on. Shout them. Yeah.
Really experiential theatre.
Yeah, exactly. That's a whole different thing.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
So, have you had much experience of Shakespeare before? You said you've found this play really through rehearsing this, but have you had much experience of dealing with Shakespeare before, either of you?
At drama school, yes, but since I've been out, no, actually. So this is my first professional Shakespeare. So that's, I think, oh yes, good.
And he has Juliet as well.
I know, hey, not bad, but it's been something I've really, really wanted to do. So when it came up, I was like, yes, good. And it's just getting getting your first one and working with the language, and because when you go up and you're auditioning for it, you're just. It can be a bit. Everyone's got their own idea of how the language should be spoken, and and you feel when maybe you go in, you think, oh, am I not doing it the way that
you like to hear it. Maybe you like the line ending stressed, or you like me to be more on the pentameter or whatever. So it's quite, it's a bit of a minefield. Everybody's got a different view, so it's just nice to finally fit somebody's view of.
Yeah. Some people have got very strong views on little things like that, haven't they? But you've had a lot of freedom, I suppose, to experiment with things in rehearsals.
I think so. I think he just wants to believe it, like more than anything.
Yeah.
And obviously, you just want to make it sound like people talking to each other. And it makes sense.
Yeah.
So I think that's his kind of criteria. And other than that, he's like, very much like, I'm coming to England as a newcomer. It's not my first language, and which is nice.
And how long can he get away with that, using that excuse? Because he's been in this country directing for a while now.
Has he? Yeah. I did wonder, because I think he does. He does.
He's got his German text. He's got his.
Has he?
Yeah.
So
English,
when we couldn't work out sometimes his pitch, we're like, we're not sure about this, and he'd be like, I'll check the German version.
Yeah.
And then we got him actually to say some lines in German, which was great. I loved it.
Yeah.
It was like, we should do it in German.
Yeah.
Well, in translation, you can modernise it without the controversy, really, can't you? Because you've got to be translating anyway, like us doing Ibsen, perhaps.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're doing Shakespeare in English, the text is already there, so there's controversy about doing anything to it, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. It was really helpful sometimes just to think, what does this line mean exactly? I just looked at the German one, and they've just kind of, you think, that makes a lot of sense.
So you translate it and translate it back again.
Yeah, exactly.
How have you coped with the venue? Because we've heard some things about the difficulty with the acoustics. I know I've done theatre and education around sports halls in schools sometimes, so I know you have to slow down to cope with those acoustics. But you were moving around from room to room, and you've got those amazing old changing rooms as well, which look like little Punch and Judy stalls, don't they?
Yeah.
How have you coped with dealing with the venue?
Well, we're just coping with it right now, because we've just kind of come in. We've been rehearsing somewhere else in an office building.
Yeah.
So this is all very new, but I think the sound is going to be the major not obstacle, but thing to work out.
Yeah.
Because if you're too loud, then it all gets muddy. And it's weird having a microphone. But again, but although I've had it on all day, and I've actually forgot I've got it on. So but I think it's going to be great, like you said, because it's got that quality of the globe. Everyone's around you.
Yeah,
it's going to be great to communicate with the audience. I think it'll really help us in the long run. Yeah, so atmospheric as well.
From my lips, my yours, my sin is purged.
And mine is
Sin from my lips. Trespass. Purged. Give me my sin again.
Recently moved into to this space with the actors.
We were able to come here twice a week for rehearsals, so that was a good thing. So the actors knew it, but we then had to give a bit more time to the technical team. So it's actually since yesterday that we came in here, and it's now the tech, which means we're working here 13 hours a day. It's just mad, but we hope to be in place next Monday. So to do a dress rehearsal then on Tuesday and open the first preview on next Wednesday.
Yeah. I've just been speaking to a couple of your actors, and they seem to quite like your method of working, which is unusual to them, in that you're very instinctive. You seem to just sort of get them to do it and then comment afterwards. Is that right?
I think I feel like, because it's Shakespeare, such the ultimate English text in a way, they are like, if you in a race, but it's not a race, but of course they are like miles ahead. I've got my German translation. I think I've done my homework, but the nuances. So I now sometimes don't even look at the text, just look at what they're doing and getting ideas from what they're doing. So it's maybe a very different approach, but it's mainly got to do with linguistic differences, I would say, or backgrounds. I approach it not much more visually now, and I think. So
going back into English, if a play is done in translation, then you can modernise it without being too controversial. Right. But if you're going back into English, I suppose you've got to bear in mind that some people won't like it if you change things too much, have you? Or does that not bother you?
It doesn't really bother me, because I think what Shakespeare did in his time is a provocation. I think and I'm not meaning like I want to be provocative, but he wrote about two young people making their minds up not to be married according to their parents' wishes, which I think at the time was quite outrageous. He's playing with religion in a strong way. He has the apothecary in there. There's lots of mentioning of illegal substances. So I think whatever you do, if you take Baz Luhrmann, what he did is, I think, a brilliant job is adapting Shakespeare to his or our own time. And I do think that we're living in our times. The language is beautiful, but I do think costumes and everything, you can adapt it to our times as well. That's possible.
Yeah. And you have employed a dramaturg on this, which is something that we very rarely do in this country, but much more common in where you're from
than
the rest of Europe. Yeah. So what's that brought to the production, do you think?
So what we've done together is, I mean, she's English, and so we've done the edited version together, which normally a director in this country does on his or her own. So that means you start with a dialogue about what is really needed and how we're going to... It says at the beginning the 2-hour traffic of the stage, which means cut it down to 2 hours. That's basically how I understand what you should be doing. And then on top of that, you come up with... So that's phase one. And then you talk about the conceptual approach. So we were inspired by Eastern Europe, and then Petra basically works on finding literature, finding background material. Then we talk to the designer, and the designer brings, according to that first instinct of Eastern Europe, the whole visual language then is all formed together. And that's the sort of more theoretical background. The practical background is that a dramaturg's eye, how I see it, is like a second pair of eyes as well. So in a production, I've asked Petra to come once a week to just look at rehearsals. So it means, as a director, you sometimes go a bit blind, and you forget what you actually wanted to tell. So someone can remind you and go, So it's like, it's just good. I mean, you can have that with an assistant as well, but I've got this tested sort of relationship that I trust, and we work quite quickly on that. So it's something I think it's not going to just be for me myself. So Petra is going to working for us on a 3-day-a-week basis, but I'm going to ask her to work on other productions as well, so other directors can basically work with Petra. Yeah. So it's just giving support and theoretical, and some directors might go, "Oh, don't leave me as someone spying over my shoulder." That's not the idea. It's meant to be support.
Right. So you're introducing the idea of a dramaturg to British theatre then?
I mean, there are other places who like Rupert Gould, who works, or until recently worked with Ben Power, for example, who's now the artist who's leading The Shed. There are other relationships, and of course you've got literary managers in lots of British theatres, so that is also covering her role a bit. So it's not just working on production, it's also covering sort of incoming work, basically. Sort of just discussing what you're programming. Yeah.
I noticed in the excerpt that we've just seen, you've got Romeo, who was in a Nirvana t-shirt. You've got a rock band at one side. This is an energetic, youthful production, but it was a youthful play from a youthful playwright, wasn't it? So you're trying to inject sort of a modern rock and roll, I suppose, energy into it.
Well, it's quite interesting. I mean, again, the music you heard is sort of done by the composer, and he's in his 40s, so we're all not sort of the young... If we just made it a young production, I'm sure you could have just found soundtracks which were much more contemporary what we're doing here. Yeah. But it's the energy which is important, and I mean, he's from Macedonia, so there will be elements of Eastern European, but without being so specific and without being like, oh, this is 2012 pop from Macedonia or something. It's much more about still trying to maintain this fairy tale. Yeah. But yeah, it's just a challenge that we don't just press a button and go, okay, let's play this track because it's so cool. And yeah, I mean, the Nirvana shirt is an ongoing process. Yeah.
And the space itself is quite a challenge. I mean, on the one hand, it's amazing. It's an incredible building, and it must be great to work in. But there are also technical challenges. You're coming in as a new artistic director, and your first production, you've got 13 actors in the cast, and you've got a space which is quite costly to convert into a theatre.
That's right.
Are you blowing all your budget in one production here?
I think we're blowing altogether. Angel Meadow, we also blew a lot of money. It was basically the decision, instead of doing 3 site-specific productions, we were saying we're going to do 2, plus the office space, which is the third. So we're going to have B Festival, the Best of B, the events, and then Insomnia, and then Replay. So actually 4 events in there. Yeah. We said the outcome of that, so we might actually have a more varied program than just doing 3 productions. So yes, we are, I wouldn't say blowing, but we are investing, I would say, more money than a normal show. And yeah, so I mean, I've spent the first production I did in London was more expensive than this one and had less actors, but you're right, it's a big production. But I just think at the beginning you just got to not splash, but just attract,
make an impression.
Yeah, just so because the worst would be that people would leave and go like, oh, nice space, but actually no set, and oh, you're doing it with 5 actors. Yeah. The space here is like an opera. It is like you need that amount of people to fill it. Yeah.
And does it give it an energy because you've got all this space to move around for the actors as well? They can run about a lot more, I suppose, than on a small stage, can't they? Yeah,
but for example, the first act, we actually have a 3-metre wide space by 7 metres. So actually, if you had a 10 by 10 metres, it would be more spacious than that, for example. But then suddenly, in the second act and third act, when we suddenly use the whole length, suddenly it's 20 metres. Yeah. And it can be suddenly between 2 people. It's like they speak over 20 metres to each other. It's quite...
And the acoustics keep coming up. The different people have mentioned the acoustics because it's a tiled building, so everything rattles around. Somebody speaks, it rattles around for several seconds. So that must have been a challenge.
I mean, what everyone told us said, what you need to do is cover it, cloth, hand cloth. And then we just said, well, but then the whole beauty and the whole, you could just have a ceiling as well. So, and you would have to put carpet into so these 2 elements of the height and also the tiles. Yeah. But we just thought, why do it then here? Yeah. So it will remain to the end a challenge. We are working with the radio mics and small speakers to try to control it. We cannot promise it will never sound like a crystal clean theatre production. It will be the challenge to the ear, but hopefully compensating a bit through the visual side, and then also just maintain with the actors to try and be as clear as possible. Yeah.
And you can use those acoustics sometimes as well. If you want to, you can shout something, and the echo can be a good effective architect. Yeah.
But in general, the shouting is not very good.
No.
No. I mean, not from them, but it's just shouting in a space like this. It's just like it just becomes white noise. Yeah.
The actor said that you don't. They're used to starting with a table read, and you didn't do very much of that at all. So how did you attack the meaning of the text with them? They said you just got them up and got them to act it out from the second day.
Yeah, I never know. I've always heard that British directors sit over weeks and then I always think but when do they rehearse this? If you've got 4.5 weeks, I always think you've got to get on your feet and I try to discourage actors to get into that safety zone. We're just talking, discussing, and making it, because you can come up with the most brilliant ideas, but actually when you put it on stage, you don't see it. So. I still think what I did, I think every day, if I started a new scene, we did sit down and read it and discussed it. But yes, we took it into space quite quickly. Yeah.
Are you surprised by the reaction to some of your directing methods from the actors?
I've heard it before. So I mean, I've worked here for 5 or 6 years. So I've heard this many times. That people said normally what happens is you spend more time at the table, and also you are just being blocked. Yeah. So people would say, stand there, this, and that's directing. I don't do that at all. I mean, I do block, but more in a way that I'd like to find out. So I really work through the scenes, but spatially. So I don't start like, oh, you're here, thank you, and that's it. But I try to, I think it's working from the gut in a way, but it still means I do have a plan, but I like to come into rehearsal sometimes thinking I have no idea, and then someone does something, you go like, got it. So much better than anything I could have thought about. So yeah.
He just discovers that I felt a wound. Like the window broke.
Great, we're not going to give that away.
That was director Walter Meierjohann, and before him actors Alex Felton and Sarah Vickers, who play the title roles, talking about the home Manchester production of Romeo and Juliet at Victoria Baths, which runs from the 10th of September to the 4th of October 2014. For more information, see homemcr.org. You've been listening to a podcast from British Theatre Guide. For more information, please visit britishtheatreguide.info.